welcome to Chess Advance. This is a game from the Chessable Masters 2023 and this is a game from the losers bracket. This is a game played between Vladislav Artemiev and Magnus Carlsen, and definitely what hell of a game it is. So without further ado, let's start with this game. Artemiev starts with e4, Magnus goes for c5, Sicilian defense, and Artemiev surprised Magnus right from the opening as he goes for g3, which is a very rare move and something called last cartoon attack, and Magnus just replies with g6, and both players feed to their bishops with bishop to g2 and bishop to g7, and Artemiev goes for knight to e2, just preparing to castle, and Magnus just develops with knight to c6, and castles by Artemiev, and Magnus just goes for d6, we see d3 and e5 by Magnus, just grabbing some space in the center, and Artemiev goes for knight b to c3, just developing moves, and same by Magnus with knight b to e7, just preparing to castle. Artemiev strikes with f4, and Magnus not worrying too much, just goes for castles in this position. We see bishop to e3 and bishop to e6, both players developing their final pieces. Artemiev goes for queen to d2, and Magnus goes knight to d4, getting the knight to a nice central outpost, and Artemiev just goes for rook to f2, doubling up rooks on the f file and getting ready for that attack. Here Magnus just goes for queen to d7, preparing to challenge the white light squared bishop. Artemiev just doubles up rook on the f file as he goes for rook to f1, and we see bishop to h3, and a surprising move by Artemiev, which is also the best move recommended by the engine, as he goes for this bishop captures on h3, then queen captures, and just this f captures on e5. We see d captures, and just this bishop to g5. Now your knight is under attack, and Magnus goes for rook to e8, defending that knight, and we see a trade. Bishop captures, rook captures, and Artemiev goes for the immediate knight to d5, just getting that knight to a nice d5 central outpost with the tempo attacking the rook. So rook moves to d7. Artemiev just goes for c3, pushing the knight back. We see knight to e6, and Artemiev just goes for a nice prophylactic move with king to it. And here Magnus can immediately grapple some advantage right from the opening with this very nice move c4, and after knight to c1 we'll see something like c captures, and after queen captures just knight to c5 attacking the queen, and once the queen moves you go for queen to e6 and just going for the c4 move, defending that knight because you know f5 is coming, and just the immediate f5. Black will have the initiative going, but it still could be anyone's game. But instead Magnus goes for this knight to c7, and this is just giving Artemiev a bit too much, as Artemiev just goes for c4, cementing that knight on d5, and now queen to e6 by Magnus, but Artemiev just goes for knight to e to c3, and now it will be very difficult to get rid of that knight on d5. Magnus tries f6, but Magnus now has to weaken his king side a little bit too much, and Artemiev just goes for queen to e2. We see knight to a6 by Magnus, going for that knight to b4, but Artemiev doesn't allow it as he goes for a3. We see knight to b8, removing the knight to a bit square, but just queen to e3 by Artemiev. b6 and b4, we see a trade, c captures, a captures, and just knight to c6. Artemiev here goes for knight to e2, removing the knight to a bit square, just queen to d6, attacking the b4 pawn. Artemiev just advances it to b5. And here the best move for Magnus was just to go for this knight to b4, and after something like g4, trying to push for that attack, just a6. And after b captures, and knight e to c3, you go for this knight to c5. After something like rook to b2, going for that b6 pawn, it will definitely be very difficult to defend that b6 pawn with too much pressure on that. So instead Magnus just goes for this knight to d8, but now it's a bit too passive position for Magnus, as Artemiev takes advantage of this and he advances on to h4, going for that attack, and Magnus goes for knight to e6, but just h5. Here Magnus goes for the best move recommended by the engine, but it's just not. Magnus goes for rook to f7, but here Artemiev can almost steal the game by going for this very nice alpha 0 move, which is, I'm sure you all see it, h6. And once the bishop moves to bishop to h8, you go for this g4, and after asking for a queen trade with queen to c5, you just goes for knight to e3. After queen trade with queen captures, knight captures, you go for this knight to c5, attacking the d3 pawn, but just rook to d1, defending, and after knight to d5, going for that b6 pawn, just rook to b8, and after rook to a2, after a5, black can have this f5 move, but it's not going to be enough, and after e captures, black will definitely try to get the bishop into the game with bishop to f6, but just rook to e2, attacking that pawn, and after bishop to g5, you just don't care and you just grab the e5 pawn with rook captures, and now after g captures, the position is very much difficult to hold for black, as you know that d4 is coming and you cannot even capture here because your bishop would hang, and if you go for this pawn falls, so very much difficult to hold for. And Artemiev has been attacking ferociously in this game, so against Magnus it's going to be very much difficult to hold in this position, but Artemiev actually misses this as he goes for this knight to g1, and Magnus just goes for f5 in this position, and now Artemiev goes for h6, but it's a bit too late as Magnus just goes for f4, and after g captures, we see bishop captures on h6, and after queen to h3, we see bishop captures on f4, and after knight to f3, and here Magnus can still opt for the advantage with a move like knight to c5, and after knight to h4, you go for queen to d7 asking for a queen trade, and once the queens get rid of the board with queen captures and rook captures, you go for rook to d1, and after rook to g7, and after king to g2. you go for this knight to e6, and after knight to f3, you go for this g5. And once white goes for a central thrust e4, you trade down into a better endgame with e captures, knight captures, and after knight rook captures, and after bishop to e5, you go for this rook captures on f8 first, and after king captures, now you go for rook to d2. Now it leads to this endgame where black has two connected pass pawns on the queen side, and in the hands of Magnus, this will definitely be winning. But Magnus doesn't spot it. Instead, he goes for this king to g7, which is a slow move, but instead of taking advantage of this, again Artemiev goes for a slow move with rook to g2, and this will not suffice. Here Magnus can again go into a winning endgame, but this move is such difficult to spot that it's even impossible for a human to spot this move. And the move is actually very insane bishop to c1. That's right. I mean, not bishop to d2, not bishop to e3, that will not work, but just bishop to c1. I mean, you cannot spot such a move in a rapid game. Point is that after rook g to g1, you go for this knight to f4, attacking the queen, and after knight captures, you go for bishop captures, and after knight to h4, trying to get the knight into the game, and also going for this monster fork with knight to f5, winning the queen. So with a move like king to g8, and after knight to f5, you go for queen to c7, and after rook to g4, you go for rook to f6, after rook f to g1, you go for rook f to f7, and after rook f1 to g2, you go for queen to d7, after king to g1, you go for queen to e8. And once white goes for a central thrust with d4, you play rook to c7, attacking the pawn, but white will just sacrifice the exchange with rook captures, and after e captures, you go for e5, and after rook to f8, you cement the knight on d6 with knight to d6, attacking the queen, and once the queen moves, you go for queen to f3, and after rook to d7, you go for rook to d2, and black will now do the same, sacrifice the exchange, as now he's better. After rook captures, you go for e captures, and after queen captures, you go for queen to e4, and after rook to f7, you can see that black has 3 connected pass pawns on the queen side, completely win. But finding all of this in a shorter time format is just near to impossible. So instead, Magnus goes for this knight to c5, and there Artemiev goes for knight to h4. And after queen to e6, Artemiev goes for rook to g4. And here with a move like bishop to d2, you're still in the game and you're fighting for it. But Magnus instead goes for knight captures on d3, and this just completely blunders the game. So pause the video and try to find this magical move for Artemiev in this position while I give you a couple of seconds. So congratulations everyone who's able to find this masterclass of a move, as Artemiev just annihilates Magnus with this rook captures on g6 check. And now there's nothing for Magnus to do in this position. Magnus goes for queen captures, and after knight captures, h captures. Magnus is down a queen, but maybe he can try something, but not really, as Artemiev goes for this queen captures on d3, and now Magnus has absolutely no compensation in this position. But Magnus still tries a few more moves as he goes for this rook to h8 check, and after king to g1, rook to h5, and after knight captures, we see e captures and queen to d4 check, king to h6, and e5. And Magnus goes for f3, we see e6 by Artemiev, and after rook to g5 check, Magnus goes for king to h2, and after rook to g2 check, Artemiev goes for king to h3, rook to h7. Artemiev just goes for rook captures on f3 and rook to g5 by Magnus, and e7, and rook captures on e7 and queen to h8 check, rook to h7 and queen to f8 check, and king to h5 and rook to f4. And now there's actually mate in 6, but both pairs are very much down on the clock, so anything can happen. And Magnus continues the game, plays a few more moves as he goes for rook to h5, and after rook to h4 check, he goes for king to g5, and after queen to d8 check, rook to f6. After rook captures on h7, Magnus loses another rook, and after king to f5, queen to d5 check, king to f4, rook to h4 check, king to e3, and rook to e4, and king to f2, and queen to d2. It was on this move, on move 60, that world champion Magnus Carlsen resigned the game and would have spectacular victory for Artemiev in this position. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I'll be coming up with a game, so stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys very soon.